But my name is Chris Swedzinski. I'm your state rep. I represent you here in House District 15A, which is Lac qui Parle County, Yellow Medicine County, and Lyon County, and just a smidgen of Chippewa, just on the side of Granite Falls, the city proper, and I think the ethanol plant is in the district as well. So every time you drive by that, going to the cities, you can say goodbye to the district and hello to the next one. But appreciate all you coming today. We've got a full day of town halls, and we thought we'd maybe start it with the Pledge of Allegiance. We've not done that in the past, but if you want to join us, there's one right there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, so starting with that, and so we've got legislative session starting in the middle of February, which is usually a later start than normal. Normally, how it works is the first year of the biennium, which was obviously 2025. We start in early January, and usually the date is set through negotiations for the second year. And because it's a little bit of a diminished amount of work that will be done, primarily bonding and some policy work, we don't need quite as much time. And so if bonding committees from that standpoint have been traveling the state pretty extensively. The House committee, I think, came through in October. The Senate came through a little bit after that, doing their work, meeting with community members, mayors, city council, engineers. Primarily, a lot of the work that we've heard from is water treatment projects, infrastructure projects, and the rest. And so that will likely take up a lot of our work. And then from a policy standpoint, really tying up loose ends from policy that was passed this in the last year, but also in prior years, trying to fix, trying to tweak, but also introduce new possibilities when it comes to policy work within the state. And then there likely will be some finance as well tied along with it. oftentimes we talk about sausage being made in St. Paul or Washington, D.C. or whatever, there's negotiations, and oftentimes some leverage that occurs with policy is that you have some finance that's traded for it or negotiated, I should say, and with that. So that'll be primarily the work. Gary and I usually try to do town hall meetings at the beginning before session starts, and then afterward, or just prior to the end, to kind of talk about what happened or whatever. And I want to thank Gary for the spring work that he did. We were still in session doing negotiations towards the end of session, so Gary, I left him to batch it by himself for the last set. So I want to thank Gary publicly for doing all the town hall meetings while I was up in St. Paul. So appreciate that, Gary. And with that, Gary, you want to say a few words and then we can get cracking.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris, and thank you folks for being here. We certainly appreciate it. Certainly want to thank the YMCA for hosting this. We do appreciate that, and for the Marshall Chamber for also sponsoring it. So Chris touched on a couple of things. The bonding bill, I do believe there will be a bonding bill. I'm not sure just how much that bonding bill will be, but I do think a lot of it's going to be looking at sewer, water, and those kinds of things, and so we'll see how that all plays out. I don't know if there'll be a supplemental budget this year or not. I haven't heard anything from the governor's office if that's what his intentions are, to have a supplemental budget, and typically that's, if he puts one out, then of course we'd follow along and probably wouldn't do his budget, but there'd be some budget negotiations. So I don't know if there will be in the Senate or not. DFL has the majority, so I've not heard what their plans are for that, but we'll see how that all plays out. But I think what the most of the session is going to be, once we get through we're going to be working on the bonding bill, but past that, I think an awful lot is going to be on the fraud and abuse that's going on. And it's getting quite rampant. And as they go in and start doing, right now there's 14 investigations going on, and they go into those investigations and they find, then it brings in something else over here. So then there's an investigation over here, and then it leads over to here. So there's quite a few things that are getting brought into these investigations, and so that's certainly going to be a big issue. But with that said, we'll open it up for questions and go from there. Who would like to start?
Go ahead.
Yes.
If you just say your name,
Sure.
where you're from, that'd be great.
Lyon County Commissioner.
Okay.
Paid family leave. I do have a thorn in my side with that, because as elected officials, I have to pay into that. but I cannot use it. Now, our other sheriff is the same way, our county attorney is the same way. They have to pay into it. For the amount of wage I get, it's not a whole big deal, but what they get, it adds up to quite an amount of money. And they're paying, and they don't have to, they can't use it. So now my question is, do you have to pay into that?
I don't know for
We
sure. I
are
don't think so.
exempt, the legislative body is exempted. We cannot take it, but and they're not paying into it.
So why is, my question to you guys is,
Yep.
why is that? You're elected official also.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the way the bill was drawn up, and we've tried over the years to make several changes to that. That bill was drawn up and passed in 2023, and every year we worked on different things to make that bill what we feel would be better, to start giving some exemptions and stuff, and we have not been able to do that. We got the one bill last year, we got passed out of a committee, but then it failed on the floor. The other bills, the other pieces of the bills to change this, we couldn't even get the bills in front of a committee to get a hearing. This year we might, and I can't promise this year there might be some opportunities to make some changes, I don't know. But typically when a bill is introduced and put into place, when it goes into effect, there's some things you have to do to clean that bill up. So there might be a bill that comes forward to do some cleanup on the paid family leave bill, and if that's the case, we can see if we can do some amendments and try to get some of this stuff straightened out. But there's a whole laundry list of things that could be changed that would make this bill a much better bill. It's not going to go away, so we got to try to make it better if we can, and so that might be an opportunity this year. That's probably the only hope we're going to have to make much changes.
One of my concerns is in our jail system with
Sure.
our police department.
Yes.
Or, with our jail. So, let's say we have 2 or 3 officers that take their off for paid family leave. Who's gonna take care, who's gonna run the jail?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then if we have to send our prisoners to a different county, is that county gonna be adequate to be able to handle it? So
Yep.
there's something, I sure hope that this gets looked
Yeah.
into, some of these things. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you for bringing it up.
Well, thank you, Gary. That is a big concern. We've heard that in the past too, because let's say you have 2 or 3, even for a city that may have 2 officers that are on duty, and both are, they both call in or whatever. They're both utilizing the program. What is the city supposed to do? Are they supposed to have an online contract with the county? Jail system is true, because you have to have minimum staff that are probably in the jail, whether that's cooks, whether that's jailers and whatnot, and how that process is supposed to work. Those are the sad part of it. Even the exemption of the legislature. That's why that bill is not a good bill. That's part of it. So,
Yes.
go ahead, ma'am.
And it's the same as for.
Can you speak up?
Sorry.
Can you speak up?
It's the same for medium-sized businesses.
Yes.
Sure.
People who won't use it are going to be paying in,
Yep.
and there are people that aren't real happy about that. But I was contacted by the state. We have a private plan, and I was contacted by the state that said someone had applied through the state, and then they wanted me to use the state website and go through all that. And I'm like, I was on the phone for him for half an hour yesterday, and I said, hey, we have a private plan through an insurance company. We're not supposed to have to go through with you guys. So I don't.
There's a
think
lot of
they got it
confusion.
together at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They just kept saying, oh, go through the state, go through the state.
Sure.
There is a lot of confusion on this, big time confusion on it. And people are calling in, not getting the answers, and in many cases, the folks that are answering the phone don't know. And this is the problem. This bill was introduced and passed in 2023, but they didn't put it into effect until 2026. And so now that bill should have been worked on a lot more to get to the hard opening and the start of that process. And so we'll keep trying to work with it and trying to get these folks to make some changes, but right now they do not want to bring it on. I can speak for the Senate. They do not want to get it on the Senate floor, because they know if it comes to Senate floor, there's going to be amendment after amendment after amendment to clean this up. And they don't want to put their caucus in that position to have to vote for vote against these things, and yet they don't want to make changes. So the best opportunity we're going to have is there's going to have to be a corrections bill, I would assume, and if there's a corrections bill, it's going to come on the floor, and now we might have some chances to make some amendments, and hopefully we can negotiate to get some of those amendments on. So we'll see how it plays out. But you're bringing up a very good point. We're very well aware of it, but it is an issue.
Next question. Go ahead.
Questions?
What's your name?
Does that bill include senior citizens?
Well, it depends if you're employed or not, right? And so you have to be earning a wage of some sort to, yeah.
According to, you don't have to have a job to get paid for this.
Well, you have to
No.
have had a job for a certain period of time in order to qualify, and then be currently employed to. If you don't have, I mean, otherwise there's no. I don't know if you had to pay both sides of that. Would that happen in that case? Because under current law, it's a shared cost, kind of like the employee pays some and the employer pays some. And so it's my understanding that I'm not sure if you can buy in if you're an individual that doesn't have a current job, if you pay both ends of that to qualify.
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be treated like unemployment.
Yeah.
You can't buy in. Well, you can now, but you used to not be able to. I don't think you can buy in. I don't think so.
Go ahead in the back. Maybe you got a clarifier? Or just a general question?
Just a.
And your name,
deeper
ma'am?
question. I'm Angela.
Hi, Angela.
So what are some of the things that you guys specifically don't like about paid family leave? And then what are some of the things that you're trying to change about it to make it better?
Sure.
Because it will be really, I love the idea of it. I
Yep.
understand that nothing is gonna be perfect no matter what. So I'm wondering, from your perspective,
Yep.
how do you guys plan to make it better? And
Yep.
what don't you like about it
Sure.
now?
Well, I think my biggest hang up is that it's not optional, right?
It's not optional?
Yeah. So if
And what do
you,
you mean by optional?
so if I'm a business owner and I don't want to participate with my business, I don't have that right to say no,
Okay,
right? I mean, I think that's foundational to our country, to say that, you know, if I want to participate in a program, I should have the right to say yes or no, because it affects my business, it affects my relationship with my employees, like, and then start from there, right? I think that's really what we need to be looking at. It doesn't matter what the program is. You can like it, dislike it, whatever, but you should have the choice to like it or dislike it, and you don't. And I think, you know, that's where the conversation needs to start. And because, you know, we're told constantly, well, this will be good, this will be good. Well, how about letting me decide as the business owner whether it's good? I think that would be one way to improve the program, is to make sure that it's optional. And then two, also lessen, you know, if we're going to kind of, I think that would be just the first way to help fix the program, because then it would actually have to compete to say, you know what, this is worthwhile or not, you know, or, you know, we're constantly told also that, well, this is a good way to retain employees. Well, let the market decide that. Right? I mean, you have some industries that it makes sense. Like, does it make sense that Gary Crawley, with his pay from a county commissioner, has to pay into it? But, you know, as an elected official, absolutely not. You know, there's a reason why the legislature was exempted, is because there's no benefit to, I mean, you just show up and vote, or you can vote from home if you're sick. Like, it doesn't kind of make, you know, it's not really, doesn't really balance, right? So that doesn't really make sense. Well, there's a whole myriad of jobs across the economy that it really doesn't make sense that it exists for, that you would capture portions of people's pay for a benefit that they can't. So that might be the second area that I would like to fix. And then the third really is to limit the amount and the potential for fraud. I think there's very little safeguards in place. It's obviously we're early on in the system, but my guess is that we're going to have a lot of utilization on Fridays and Mondays, and a lot of utilization the week beforehand of 4th of July and the week after 4th of July.
So the other thing too is that we need some exemptions as to who has to be part of this.
Mm-hmm.
We have, you know, some people that have some part-time, just 1 or 2 part-time people. A good example is agriculture. They may hire a truck driver for a few weeks in the fall to harvest beets or whatever. They may help somebody put the crop in the spring. These folks have to participate. There's, in many of the states that have this, there are some exemptions that small businesses can use, and not in Minnesota. The other thing is that I would much rather see this managed by an outside organization versus by the state of Minnesota. There's an opportunity for fraud in this, and we need to make sure that we have some backstops in that. And I'm not seeing those backstops. So, and accountability, we don't know where that'll be because it's just starting. But give you an example, if you had a child born in 2025, you can apply and be eligible to take 12 weeks of leave in 2026. Well, that was never in the bill that they were going to go back and do a soft opening. And so they did a soft opening and allowed those people to apply. That should not have happened. They wanted it to start January 1st of 2026. That was the date it should have started. Not go back a year back and allow people to apply and get the benefits for a year back, and that's not the way that's supposed to happen.
So then why is that being allowed? And maybe I'm naive to how all this works, but if the bill was written and passed and ready to go, like why was that allowed then?
That's a good question, and I wish I could get the people to answer that, why that was allowed. My assumption is, we just found out about this recently, that they were having a soft opening and allowing this. And so what should have happened is they should have come back to the legislature to do that, which they couldn't have come back till February. That should have been that shouldn't have happened. So the only thing I can think of, and I'm not getting any answers. I've tried to get some answers, but I'm not getting them as to why, if this was done by rulemaking. I don't know if rulemaking done it, or if they just decided to do it and figured, well, if people don't like it, if somebody don't like it, they can sue us. There's been way too much of that attitude going on the last 2-3 years, is if people don't like what we're doing, then they can just sue us. Well, it's pretty hard to sue the state of Minnesota and get very far with, well, I'm not going to get into any deeper than that. But it's, we need to follow the rules, and we need to play by the way the bill was drawn, and that doesn't always happen. It's not happened. In the last 2-3 years, there's been a lot of that, getting outside the margins and seeing what happens and if they're going to get challenged.
Do you have go ahead. You have a follow-up to that, or are you good to go?
Well, I guess I didn't really hear a plan forward for how you're gonna really try to make it better then.
Well, I just mentioned making it better would be to do some of these exemptions, go to an outside source. What I'm saying, you may not like what I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying we should be doing.
Well, it's not that I don't like what you're saying. Sorry, I'm very I need to understand how things work. And when you just say that you want to make exemptions,
yes.
Why do you make exemptions then? Who gets together?
Okay.
Well, we would have a bill. So essentially, what we'd have is we would have bullet points of, we want to change this, and this. We create a bill, or we have amendments. So these are all amendments and bills that we've either dropped or had amendments on the House floor that we presented and talked about. Say, hey, why don't we try this? Let's exempt you. If you're an employer of 50 people, you don't have to comply, or 5 people, or 2 people, you don't have to comply, right? All those were voted down. And so then the process is to move those potentially forward, is that you, during a finance year or during a policy year, you find a way, like we talked earlier about making sausages, right? You figure a way that what leverage can you use? So what other areas, what spending or what policy priorities does Governor Walz have that he would be willing to trade for any one of those things? And so far, what Gary and I are both talking about, we have yet to find something that the Governor Walz would be willing to trade for to help make some of those policy decisions. And so when we're talking about the process is trying to figure out which way that you can use political leverage for political leverage. And so that's a quandary. So right, so you either change what you trade for, or you change who you're trading with. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Your name?
Darwin Dice.
Yes.
From Ghent. The opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. Even a dead fish can go with a float. Now that's from Jim Hightower, the former Texas Ag Commissioner. But yesterday, Renee Nicole Good was killed by an ICE agent, an incident where ICE clearly was not in any danger. Watch the video if you think the killing was justified. ICE agents have been acting as judge, jury, and executioner. Soon after it happened, Kristi Noem framed Renee Good as a domestic terrorist, a statement far from the truth. Donald Trump pardoned the January 6 rioters at the U.S. Capitol who attacked police, some of whom died or have suffered brain injury while they were defending the Capitol and those elected to serve our country, both Republican and Democrat. Why do you and so many members of your party stand by and allow such disinformation and immoral acts by ICE and our president to go unchallenged? Again, even a dead fish can go with the flow.
Well, thank you for your statement, Darwin. I think it's important that, if, like, I've maybe seen the video at a glance, there is laws in effect that if that particular individual ICE agent made a mistake or not. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not the judge, jury, or executioner, as you like to say. But I think it's important that we don't paint broad brushes, right? Whether we throw a whole community under the bus, whether we throw law enforcement under the bus, whether we throw a federal agency under the bus, or a party under the bus, right? So I think we all get ourselves in trouble when we decide we're going to chuck everyone. Just as there's good groups of people, there's bad groups of people, there's bad eggs, bad apples, good apples, whatnot. And I think it is a concern if that individual law enforcement officer shot that person. I wasn't there, right?
So would you share a message to Kristi Noem that very same thing, that it's premature to throw Renee under the bus and call her a domestic terrorist?
I would not use those words myself. And I don't have the ability to she's a person she can do what she wants. It's the words that I use that I think that are most important, Darwin.
So I think we need to let the investigation play out and find out how it plays out. We got way too many people jumping to a conclusion, which you just did. You just said that police officer did not have the right to do that, that his life wasn't in danger. If you weren't there, you don't know that. You can look at different sides of that and make a different conclusion. My opinion is, let's let the investigation play out and see what they come up with.
And are we okay with Donald Trump pardoning the January 6 rioters?
I'm a state legislator. I've got,
the problem is you folks, and when I say you folks, some of the Democrats have just been playing this game election after election after election. You want to hang your hat on something. Let's look to the future and not to the past. You keep going back to January 6th. Did you bring up any information about January 6th that's been found out after the fact? And that now there's found out to be a lot of things that happened that time that weren't proper, that should have not happened, and it wasn't on the Democrats side, or it wasn't on the Republican side. So I'm not going to even discuss that.
Okay.
I think
I
you
have a
had your.
question for you,
just wait, John. I think this gal had her hand up first.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Given the publicity and the severity of the incident yesterday, I'm just a little curious why you haven't seen the video. That seems like something you might be interested in.
I've watched it.
I can't hear you. I said, given the severity and the publicity of this incident yesterday, I'm just curious why one of our Minnesota lawmakers hasn't seen the video yesterday. That's a question.
I have seen parts of the video, and my comment is going to be the same. Let's let the investigation play out. I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and say they're guilty or not guilty. Let's let the investigation play out. That's how we do it in the United States. That's how we're supposed to do it in Minnesota. Let's let that play out.
Well, I think in all these things, we have to whether you're a person in healthcare, whether you're a law enforcement agent, whether you're a number of these things, folks put themselves in people's worst situations every single day of their lives. And I wouldn't want to do that as a job. I wouldn't want to be involved in law enforcement because of the type of work that it is. You're seeing people on their worst day every single day of your career. And while it's easy to play armchair quarterback on the actions, that individual ICE officer will be held accountable for his actions. He will. Go ahead,
I
John.
have a question. I don't think we can, statement first. I don't think we can prosecute this stuff here.
Yeah.
We need to leave it
Yeah.
alone. It'll play itself out. We just need to let that happen. My question is back to the initial topic that was brought up here on paid leave and other things that come into play in the state of Minnesota. Can we put sunset clauses on these things? In other words, you know what the sunset clauses are. But so that we can look at them, if they play out for 2 years, they would come up for a full valid position to say, let's re-audit that fully, and then make a decision again to say either move forward or kill it. I don't know if that's a 2-year time frame or if it's a 3-year time frame, because some of these things have to, as you said, get into play first, and then let's see how they execute. But what we're finding without having a full review is we add amendment after amendment after amendment to these things, and we get lost in the shuffle. The employers get lost in the shuffle, and the state gets lost in the shuffle. I think there needs to be an opportunity for these types of things, and perhaps even all bills, to have sunset clauses on them so we come back for a full review. Can you discuss that with us a little bit and how some of that might play out effectively?
Well, with the sunset clauses, what we find is that when we put in, it's hard to get sunset clauses put into these things because it's hard to get the votes. And this would be, sunset clauses will get votes from both sides of the aisle, for and against. And it's usually pretty hard to get those votes unless you put the sunset clause way out there. You know, if you want to do a 10-year sunset clause, and then what happens on the 9th year, they'll attach it into a motion of something else stating that sunset clause is going to get moved out for 10 more years. To do the short-term ones is pretty hard to do because this paid family leave is a very, very expensive bill. And we've hired roughly 400 people to manage this process because we couldn't get it to go outside. So we have a group of about 400 people that's going to be managing this thing. And so it's hard to get a short-term sunset because it's hard to get the votes to do that. But sunset clauses have worked in some areas. Very few things sunset. Some of the taxes had sunset clauses, and those clauses came up since I've been into office. And what happens is about a year before or so, you'll have this thing will get snuck into a tax bill. Not snuck in, it gets brought into a tax bill by an amendment, and it's just moved forward, and the sunset clause just moves forward. But you got a good point, no question. If you want to come in,
Yeah,
folks,
if you're
feel
out in the
free to
hall,
do so.
we've got extra
come
seats.
on in.
So, not to put you on the spot, sorry. But go ahead, back in the back.
Hi, Tether Bliss, City Administrator in Cottonwood.
Okay.
Question, I'm gonna shift gears. For the past few years, I know legislation's been fighting the state stepping in to take some zoning power away from the cities. Wondering, I've heard rumbles that it's coming back again in this session and it's getting harder to fight. Wondering if you've heard if those bills are coming back, revised, not revised. Are they on the docket to be a bargaining chip for, you know, some Minnesota paid leave things? Just kind of curious. I've been watching them for the past few years.
Tether, if I'm familiar, is it primarily with some of the housing stuff, or
It's
which?
like right-of-ways, restricting right-of-ways. It's determining there's exemptions for what can be allowed in like residential areas, and a few other things. But I think the big one we've been watching is limits on right-of-ways. So they want that one, and then certain commercial businesses such as like shelters, and a few other things have to be allowed inside industrial areas and residential areas.
Sure.
I know that's a couple of the.
Sure. Well, primarily my default is when it comes to zoning issues is that should be allowed to the locals as much as possible. Just that's my general rule of thumb. Obviously, whether it's any number of a story could be told for any reason to want to change something at the state level, and that's usually how it works. So you have a special interest group or someone that wants to do something within a city, or primarily what we've seen a lot of is with like HOAs. So these home groups, I don't know exactly how they're put together, but you'll see that oftentimes where if they're not getting the resolution at a local elected official standpoint, they come to the state legislature and try to do a blanket statement across the state that would kind of encapsulate all local jurisdictions when it comes to that type of thing. Generally, I'm not a big fan of those. And, depending on what it is, and, obviously there's, I like to, keep those, like, throughout that process, how I would engage it is I would be talking to the League of Minnesota Cities or the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, get their take on it to see, is this a B or C or D or F priority for you? Like, is this, like, if it's an F, you really don't care, then that might be something we could look at. But if it's an A issue, primarily from the association and from our local cities, that would be something that obviously we would be much more interested in. And that's interesting on those particular issues when it comes to housing and right-of-way. It can not necessarily be, we talk a lot about, Democrat or Republican. I have Republicans that disagree with me on that type of stuff when it comes to housing development. And so it's interesting that it's not necessarily party, but it's one of those particular issues that if you have something you're passionate about, I disagree with other Republicans on it. So.
And I sit on the Minnesota Association of Small Cities board too, and it's one of those higher topics that we talk about every time at our board meetings. And I know it comes up with the league a lot as well on watching these bills.
Sure.
Another one they're trying is the lot size requirement. So if you have a 5,000 square foot lot, they don't want to allow, you can't limit what goes on that lot or the size of house that goes on that lot. So like in Cottonwood, we have the impervious surface to protect the lake. Well, a zoning bill like that would say, okay, that 5,000 square foot lot, you can put as many houses on there as you want.
Sure.
Well, then that goes against Minnesota DNR on what they say about protecting public waterways.
Sure.
So,
Well, don't expect state government to always make sense. So,
I know.
all right.
We're going to see those bills keep coming back. They've been, the last 3-4 years, the housing one in particular, and the zoning ordinances and things like that have been coming back. They'd like to change, put more teeth in that so that it takes a less of what your ability is to do the way you want to do it. I don't support those bills. I don't think that that's the answer to housing. There's a lot of other answers to housing, and I don't think we need to tell the cities how you can do your developments and stuff like that. I think that's made by the local people. But it'll be back again this year, and I would say, in my opinion, it will get about as far as it has the last couple of years. I don't know that it's really picking up any steam, and a couple of the people that are really pushing it are going to be not running for election again next trip around. So I don't know that I will continue to vote against them and continue to speak against them unless there's some major changes in them that make it so that it's kind of a joint decision between, the housing and you folks. But at this point, I don't see that getting too far.
Anybody else?
thank you.
Go ahead.
John Newton, Clifton Township. Is that your position on feedlots too? Permitting feedlots to keep the control local in the townships?
Well, a large extent, as long as it's continuation. So, as from a feedlot standpoint, it also is a pre-agricultural area. So, if there's duty, if we understand rural Minnesota as being an agricultural state and allowing some of those things to happen, I think those are important as well. But, that's the slippery slope, right? And so whether it's a feedlot permitting issue, whether it's a renewable energy, saying, hey, we don't want this or a coal plant or whatever, that's the issue, right? So if it's something you care about, then it's one way. That's probably the toughest part of being a legislator, is finding that balance between, okay, feedlots. Should locals be able to ban feedlots? Essentially, what you're saying, right? Because that's the battle. So whether it's, hey, I don't want these in my backyard. Well, is it a primary agricultural area? And historically, is this what this is? And is this rural? Is it rural residences going against ag?
Right.
Or what is is there a specific instance that you're talking about or anything, John?
There was a push to take local control away from the townships and the counties and put it on the state level to allow higher animal units per feedlot.
Sure.
Which I've got enough around me, put it that way. So we want to maintain our local control.
Sure.
That say we've got enough cattle, hogs, turkeys, or whatever it is, and no more.
Sure.
Because the water can only hold so much. So
I'm surprised that you're in a situation to where that the state is telling you that you're concerned about the state allowing bigger barns. Typically, it's the reverse of that. Most of what I've seen, the states have wanted smaller or not any, and so it surprises me that you're having the reverse of that. But
I'm not. I don't care size, location matters to me. That's the main thing.
Location.
You're concerned
Size,
about the change of who's going to have the right to
who's
make the
gonna have
decision.
the
And I
say.
understand. Yeah.
As long as it's not some higher up than a county level.
Sure.
My opinion is somebody sitting in an office in the state of Minnesota and they don't have any windows, so they don't see out what's going on in the real world, probably shouldn't be making those decisions. Other questions?
Right.
Yes, sir.
My question to both of you is,
Name?
Josh Schaefer, Culver Towing. Our local communities, our counties, County Commissioner Crowley, Sharon's here, Tether, they have worked very hard to, we've upgraded our trail systems, our counties, parks, everything like that. I just want to hear, based from you two, what's your agenda going into this next session to make the quality of life better in our region? Our university's deteriorating. There's a lot of upgrades out there. When you go through a university, it's old. The locker rooms, I've been in them, they're disgusting. What are you guys doing? I know it's a bonding bill. I don't know if anything's been proposed, but is there anything that you guys are doing to help improve, business traction to our region and those things to help what our Commissioner Crowley and our folks are doing here to try to enhance our quality of life and make it a better situation down here?
Sure.
Well, if you start with the university out here, they do have, you're correct on the locker rooms, and those locker rooms would have probably been done until they had that major issue with some heating and cooling in one of the buildings. And so some of that money had to be shifted over to take care of that. The locker rooms are still on the docket. The new addition for the entryway, which would reduce, right now that university has more entryways into their buildings than most other universities do, which is a safety concern. So there is a look at a new entryway that would close a lot of those other entries and bring them kind of into the front and the back, so you had a little more control. That's still in the docket. There's some other bills on the heaper. What amounts to is the legislative body, we don't have the authority, we don't choose where, we decide how much we'll put into the heaper program. The heaper program is a program that would take care of the locker rooms, takes care of the maintenance and stuff of the buildings at the various college campuses. So we give them so much money every bonding cycle. They go through and determine, they've got a rating structure they use to determine where those rank and rate. The locker rooms here have rated quite high and probably very likely will continue to, so it depends on how much money we get as to how far down the list we can get in making these changes. And so that's what's happening there, and there's been some pretty good support out there for the college here. Chris and I have both been very strong supporters of the university and trying to work some of those projects through. From a standpoint of local communities and stuff, there's the LCCMR money, and that's given out by people putting in requests, and then those requests are heard, and then they decide which ones of those requests where the money will go. And I know that Marshall's got some money over the past. I don't know what they might be looking at right now to get some of that. A few years ago, we were able to help with getting some money for the swimming pool and getting some things done there. So, specifically what bills do I have laying in there right now? I've got some heaper bills for the college, and there's some requests for bonding money for some other projects here in Marshall, but we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I'd say on the other side of that coin, we did take a hit within the last couple of years by losing a state park. The one up in Yellow Medicine County there, that 1,100 acres is yet to been replaced. The governor and his party decided to get rid of a state park, and it doesn't exist. And so that we've been promised some sort of a solution. We've been promised money. We've been promised a lot of things, and yet nothing from them has happened. And so, that will be another renewed focus this year for Gary and I, is to see where that, what leadership the governor's willing to show on that front as well. So, you know, and you know, from Parks and Trails standpoint, you know, those, you know, I think there's lottery money that goes towards some of that sort of thing, and then and the rest and LCCMR and some of those. I'm not as familiar with a lot of those, but yeah.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead. I think we got a trail person here that wanted to chat about that.
Myron Coots in Carlisle. We're from Pipestone, so you're in luck. Your future is not going to depend on our votes. But anyway, we're representing the Casey Jones State Trail.
Right.
And as you're talking about various legacy money and what have you, because we are a state trail, we can only get money through the bonding process. And we do have a couple bills, both a House bill and a Senate bill, that have been introduced by Joe Schumacher and Bill Weber. And we're here asking for your assistance and support of that. I have a couple of handouts with the information, and rather than me speaking for hours and hours, I'll just give it to you. So
That's good, thank you. Okay.
Any
I'm
other?
sure it's a good trail. Sounds good.
Any other comments, sir?
Anything else?
Oh, Bill.
Good.
Well, yes, we do look at the state trail from a standpoint. It's an economic development process. It's part of a whole bunch of things, and the reason for that is when we try to recruit people out here into rural Minnesota, people that are possible candidates for employment look at amenities. And amenities are a raft of things. Since we live in a county that does not have a natural lake, we can't even offer that. But having said that, trail systems, both for hiking and biking, and in the wintertime snowmobiling, if we do have snow, is very important for people's quality of life. And that's what we're trying to improve.
Thanks for coming.
Next.
You had a hand there? I think you had your hand up, sir, in the back. No? Okay. Anybody else?
John?
Go ahead. Well,
You know, I have a question about this quality of life is an important thing. One of the ways to improve the quality of life is to balance the budget. And I'm wondering, what are we doing to balance the budget, and what priority does it have in the legislative sessions and the things that we have going on at the state level? It's been years since we've balanced the budget.
No.
at the state level, we're always balanced.
We had $17 billion at one time, so that was excess, and then we spent that plus another $5 billion. We need help in that area. I mean, quality of life is leave the money in our pockets instead of putting it into yours or somebody else's to spend. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes, appreciate you bringing that up. Number one is the state has to balance their budget. We have no choice. We always have a balanced budget. However, what happens is the taxes just go up to make the budget balance. Give you an example. Typically in a budget year, we increase the budget by say $1.5 to $2 billion of new money in a biennium. In 2023, they increased the spending in that budget by $38.5 billion. Of that, $18.5 billion was the surplus. Then there was a $10 billion tax and fee increase that year. The balance of it came out of COVID money that was laying around in the corners that didn't get distributed during the COVID years, so that money was brought into that balance. That budget balanced, but we spent $38.5 billion. Of that, about $24 billion got put into, was a carry forward, so that the budget was going to be increased that much in outlying years to come. From when I came in 2011 until the end of the cycle right before 2023, the budget increased $17 billion. It went from $34.5 billion to $50.5 billion in that 12-year period. In 2023, we increased that budget by $24 billion, and brought it from 50.5 to $74.5 billion. We saw massive tax increases, the whole 9 yards. We have to get a handle on our spending. We can't spend, and so what happened when we dumped $38.5 billion new money into this budget, the system could not handle it. The system can handle maybe 2, 3 billion, 4 billion. It can't handle a $38 billion increase. So what happens is you had people shoveling money out the door and not following protocol, and now today we sit here and a lot of this abuse started and fraud started before 2023, but a lot of it have started after 2023 because the protocol wasn't followed because we had to get all this money out onto the street. When you have to put $38 billion new money out on the streets in a 2-year period, and you don't ramp up all of the support to make it happen, you've got problems, and that's exactly where we're at today. You are right. We need to do something about getting this balance back in checks and balances, and we have to make sure we get this fraud under control. And there's going to be some heartburn doing that because people have got so used to money just coming out. And we just can't keep as a state going that way. Chris?
Well, yeah, I think, that's from a balance perspective, from a competitive standpoint, those are all, it's that balance of quality of life. That's the argument is, well, we have a good quality of life, it can make up for, our tax atmosphere. And, it is one of those things. We do want universities that operate well, that are competitive. We happen to be very, very lucky in Marshall that we have SMSU, which is, I think, either the first or second university when it comes to actually retainment and then actually drawing in new students. And that's something to be said. And what makes that possible is that you have an agile administration. So I think they've been very good out here in the fact of changing what they're offering, changing with the times. Things are moving really quickly when it comes to our economy, whether it's the digital economy, whether that's AI, whether it's nursing or agriculture, changing what you're offering so that you're regionally significant. That's the microcosm of what government needs to be doing as well. And so how are we delivering efficient, good government? And, the OLA report just came out that just stated that their analysis of a few of the departments couldn't be done because essentially what the OLA said was that we had state employees falsifying and backdating documents that they were submitting to the Office of the Legislative Auditor, so that the analysis that they could do couldn't even be correct in the fact that whether or not they knew what was going on. And so that is inefficient, that is wasteful, and primarily our goal should be, if when it comes to energy, the best energy, since we have some energy folks here, the best energy that you generate, or the way to save energy is not burn it to begin with, right? And I used to serve with Dan Fabian, and he was a calisthenics instructor at the school or whatever he would be, exercise science. He said the easiest calorie to burn is the one that you don't eat, right? And so the easiest money to save when it comes to government is the one that you don't tax. And so when it comes to being lean in government, what are ways of cutting that? Well, I think anyone would agree that the first place to lean government is to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And then the second is, how are we delivering the services in an efficient manner? And, is that 400 employees for a program that hasn't even gotten off the ground yet? And from what Gary talked about, we had 12,000 people sign up before the program was even supposed to start. I don't know.
Cliff.
So, go ahead, Cliff.
Cliff Carmody, taking directors of this was first and foremost, thanks for coming out here for these town hall meetings. I think it's really important. It's not getting any easier. I understand that. I want to thank you for one thing, and I do want to offer a concern that I have. Thank you for your support for the work we did with SMSU on repurposing the building there to take a building and make it functional, effective, and efficient again for programming that we have in the social science building. So thank you for your support in that. My concern is with the F word, right? The fraud. We want to be careful that we don't take a broad sweeping brush and create problems for programs that exist today that are in fact running efficiently, are compliant with the expectations of state government, and are making a huge difference in the lives of our little
Sure.
children, preschool programming. And so as we work through this legislative session, and there will be a push for trying to make people accountable, as they should. There should be accountability. No disagreement with that. How we do it matters. And so I hope that we can continue to have conversations about that so that we don't lose sight of the fact that there are very good programs that today that are in jeopardy because of some of the things that's coming out of DHS and the requirements of how we do that. So thank you again for all that you do.
And that's a very, very important fact, is that we pay attention to who's going to get hurt by some of these changes that are going to have to be made, and protect those that are doing it properly. Unfortunately, so many times the people who take the biggest loss are the ones that are doing things right, and that's what we got to be very careful of. Yes, ma'am?
Val, I have a question regarding funding. I've been working for almost 2 years regarding the wind towers and solar panel companies, and met with Excel a couple of times and dealing with the commissioners and stuff like that. I want to know, President Trump has said they're cutting some of the fundings for this, where we are on a state level. Also regarding data centers and that, and the water usage of them if they're being brought in
Sure.
transmission lines. Because when I question them, I understand recycling ponds and all of the above. But if we're in a drought season and they're building these solar panel companies over aquifers and different things like this, we are agriculture area also. And when you have to, I've checked about eminent domain and all of them, I'm probably going all over because it's covering a couple of different areas. But I want to know where you're standing with all of this and what you are doing for people that do not want to be involved, and the money that's being wasted. I know the counties that get the money for the wind towers, all they do is hammer the gavel down and spend the money like it's water running out of a bridge on stupid things. And you can't say anything to object to how they're spending the money that they get for the wind towers, and they always use it. Oh, then it's keeping our taxes lower. But they're not using it to keep our taxes lower. They're spending it and keeping our taxes whatever. And I just want to know where you're at on some of this funding, because it's a game with the wind tower companies and solar panels. And I know you can't control the farmer's land, who agrees they want to sell it and all of that. I do understand that. But the carrots dangling, I checked with one wind power company up by Becker. They filed bankruptcy. They don't even have to decompose the wind towers anymore.
Sure.
I mean, there's all kinds of issues in this and people aren't made aware of it.
Well, I think you bring some interesting points up, Val. You know, I know there's some tax stuff at the federal level, and you know, the Ag Secretary, I can't remember her name, but she announced that from a solar perspective that they don't want any money moving forward that be on prime farmland. I happen to agree, just in general, that that's not necessarily a good use of good ag land, is to put solar panels on it. You know, if you believe that we should protect the rainforest in Amazon or whatever, like we should be building these on deserts or sand or something, not necessarily on the best ground we have here in southwest Minnesota when it comes to solar development. That's just what I think. From a tax standpoint, you know, how a county spends the money, you know, obviously those are improvements. You know, you do have control over that. You can ask questions to your county commissioner, or, I mean, if you're really up to it, run for county commissioner. That would be one way to do it. What was your other stuff? Was data centers and water usage. You know, those are, you know, I know there's a spectrum of technology out there. You know, some do use water. There's others that don't. You know, I know a lot of the vast majority of stuff that's being developed in the Midwest are considered like a closed loop system. And so essentially they operate the same way that the radiator in your car works. So essentially it's a glycol water mix that runs through a radiator through the CPUs and the computers in the data center. And so then those just get cycled through. And some of the unique things of building in the Midwest is that they use less electricity than they do in other parts of the country because you have such cold weather. Because you need such heat is created by them. You essentially can use, I think, 200 to 220 days of chilling that doesn't have to occur because you're just using the ambient temperature to cool the computers, which is a net positive, I believe. When it comes to the development of them, that's where we're going. I mean, you look at from a national, international, and standpoint. They're going to get built someplace. They should probably get built here so that we control what's coming in and out of them, rather than in China or some other place. So, that's Wayne Gretzky said, what made him so good at hockey is that he skates to where the puck's going to be, not where it's at. And so, from that standpoint, when it comes to data centers and some of those things, where is the puck going to be? I'd rather it be in our backyard than in China's.
And President Trump withdrew us from the International Global Climate Agreement.
Sure.
And I don't know whether that's just recently, but he did it because it's disproportionate cost to the U.S., or where we pay more for trying to clean our so-called emissions and everything up compared to other countries and that.
Well,
where he thinks it's limiting our ability to move forward with like mining and different things like that. So I don't know where this all plays into it. I guess we'll find out on this,
Well, it's not simple, that's for sure. If you figure
right.
we're gonna mine the same amount of copper that's been mined in the last 500 years in the next 25 years. So where that comes from, I mean, you're seeing that in the markets. I think copper is just traded for $13,000 a ton, and that's 3 or 4 times what it's been in the past, and it's only going to go higher. And so it's a resource rich. It has to be exceptionally efficient. And so that's gold, that's silver, that's nickel. And I believe northern Minnesota plays a part in that. And any new hands?
Well,
just wait. We're about done.
Yeah.
If there's a new hand that hasn't
more
raised their
question.
hand, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question about how the changes in ACA are going to affect rural hospitals. Also, like what's going to happen with the insurers for people who have lower incomes.
Sure.
Are they going to be affected to a large degree with their costs going up for insurance?
Sure. I'm not as probably health. I don't serve on the health committee. If Joe Schumacher was here, he'd probably be able to help you out as much. I mean, we can look at, if you want to email me on that, I can look into it. But your American HCA would be the Affordable Care. Yeah, those are more federal. Sure.
Our local area.
Yeah. I'm not as familiar with the federal program stuff. Sorry. So.
And I'm not sure just how that's going to, just what those effects are really going to be, how that's going to settle out. I really don't.
Real fast, you.
And that's it.
Go ahead. Yep.
So, just going back to that incident yesterday.
Sure.
We've got our Democratic leadership inciting violence against the ICE people. So then you get an unstable, radical person to do what they did yesterday, and that's the result, what we saw.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that we have people inciting that people should exercise the right to protest. If people want to protest, they have that right. But we should not be, as leaders, we should not be encouraging them to do that, to show their support. There are laws on the books, and those laws are they're following the law. And so we shouldn't be out there protesting. I just don't think that's the way it's going to go. The other thing is we have to get the temperature between Trump and Walz. That temperature has to be brought down. That's a lot of our problem. They need to get that temperature brought down, and each person has to start, we have to live by what the rules are. If we don't like the rules, then change them. But until they're changed, we need to follow them.
All right.
So with that said, we're going to wrap it up. We're at that point in time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, folks, for coming. Certainly appreciate again the YMCA hosting this for us and the chamber sponsoring it. Chris, any final comments?
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your winter.
Thank you.